Welcome. Tonight, we invite you on a slow, quiet journey into a forgotten corner of the past. A journey not of kings or conquests, but of silence, repetition, and misunderstood minds. You're listening to Boring History for Sleep, where we gently unfold the overlooked, the mundane, and the deeply human layers of history, at a pace that invites your thoughts to wander, your eyes to rest, and eventually your mind to drift into dreams. In this episode, we'll explore the quiet corridors and heavy routines of the 19th-century asylum, places where echoes lingered longer than words, and time itself seemed to slow. Through 4 calming chapters, we'll begin with a sensory-rich walk through the daily life of a patient inside such an institution. We'll then follow the remarkable undercover journey of a young journalist, Nellie Bly, as she risked everything to see inside for herself. From there, we'll take a step further back to examine the strange and often forgotten treatments once used to heal the mind. And finally, we'll end in a sharply contrasting setting, the drawing rooms and lace-curtained lives of upper-class Victorian women, who were often quietly suffering under a different kind of confinement. As always, there's no need to stay alert or remember every name. Let the rhythm of the words and the quiet distance of the past help you let go of today. You may fall asleep halfway through or gently drift in and out. That's perfectly fine. Now find a comfortable position. Perhaps close your eyes and imagine yourself somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere forgotten, somewhere like this. Imagine yourself walking down a long corridor, the walls lined in cold stone and flaking whitewash. The faint scent of damp linen and carbolic hangs in the still air. The windows are high, too high to see out of, and the light that filters through is soft but distant, like the light you might find in a church or a cellar. It is morning, but the routine has already begun. In a 19th-century asylum, life was governed by a strict and often unchanging rhythm. Bells marked the passing of hours, not clocks. You would awaken not by the sun, but by the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallways as attendants moved from room to room. Your bed is simple, iron frame, thin straw mattress, neatly made. You are expected to rise promptly. There is no time for lingering, no space for solitude. Clothing is uniform, plain, and scratchy against the skin. Even your personal belongings, if you had any, were likely taken upon arrival. Breakfast is served in silence. Porridge or bread, occasionally tea, though rarely warm. Meals are quiet, observed, and eaten with others who, like you, live somewhere between routine and confusion. Some speak in whispers, others stare, eyes unfocused. Conversation is rare and not always encouraged. Throughout the day, the asylum follows its schedule like a machine. Time is divided into tasks: cleaning, walking, sitting still. Patients who were deemed calm might be given sewing or broom work, considered part of a therapeutic occupation. Those more agitated might be confined, gently or otherwise. Imagine walking in circles in a walled garden, the gravel crunching softly beneath your shoes, with nurses stationed at regular intervals. The trees, if there are any, are trimmed low. There is nowhere to hide. Now picture the silence, not peaceful but weighted. A silence broken only by footsteps, the clink of keys, a cough, a mutter, or sometimes something else. A sharp cry, a sudden outburst, followed more often than not by the closing of a heavy door. There were treatments, of course, though most were designed more to quiet than to cure. Cold baths, long and uncomfortably still, sometimes used to calm agitation. Restraints, when necessary, made of leather or cloth. Solitary rooms, softly padded, were used not just for safety, but to give patients space away from others, and to protect others from them. Doctors visited, though not always daily. Some were progressive for their time, gentle and observant. Others believed in harsher methods, more discipline than care. Patients were watched for signs of improvement, but that word could mean many things: a quieter demeanor, a blanker stare, a willingness to comply. In some asylums, the better-funded ones, there were attempts at music, reading, even dances, brief glimpses of normalcy in otherwise regimented lives. But in many others, especially overcrowded ones, there was simply not enough time, not enough staff, not enough space for such kindnesses. The walls absorbed the years. Paint faded, names changed, and many who entered never left. Still, each day unfolded in much the same way. Wake, Washington, eat, sit, walk, watch, sleep, and in the middle of all of it, you, not a danger, not a spectacle, just a quiet figure among many, moving through the rhythm of a world that few outside ever truly saw. And now we'll leave the ward behind for a moment, as we turn toward the story of someone who did see, who went inside not because she had to, but because she chose to, someone whose footsteps still echo through the halls of history. Let's follow them. Imagine stepping off a quiet street in New York City in the year 1887. The clatter of horses on cobblestones fades behind you as you step into a dimly lit foyer. The air smells faintly of ink, damp wood, and the anticipation of risk. You are about to do something few others would ever dare: pretend to be insane. This was the choice of Nellie Bly, though that wasn't her real name. She was born Elizabeth Jane Cochran, a spirited young writer who had already grown tired of the limited roles women were allowed to play in journalism. Tired of household columns and polite society stories, she wanted something more, something real. And so, at just 23 years old, she proposed something radical: that she would feign madness, gain admission to one of the most notorious asylums in America, the Women's Lunatic Asylum on Blackwell's Island, and report back from within. It began with careful mimicry. Nellie practiced her expressions, her speech, her gaze. She checked herself into a boarding house under the name Nellie Brown and began behaving strangely, speaking in odd tones, refusing to sleep, claiming she was being followed. She never once said she was mad. She simply let others assume it. Within days, doctors and officials were convinced. She was examined, questioned, and declared insane. The process was unsettlingly simple. No one made much effort to dig deeper. No friends or family were contacted. Soon, she found herself ferried across the East River, toward the looming stone buildings of Blackwell's Island. Now, imagine this journey with her. The boat rocks gently on dark water. The city disappears behind you, replaced by cold walls and a sky that seems just a little more gray. The asylum was overcrowded, underfunded, and strictly regimented. Nellie's sharp, observant mind took in everything. Breakfast was a thin gruel served in dirty bowls. Beds were narrow, sheets rarely washed. The nurses, many of them untrained, were often indifferent, sometimes even cruel. Patients who cried or spoke out were slapped, restrained, or doused in cold water. But perhaps most haunting of all were the other women. Nellie spoke with them, quietly and carefully. Some had been committed for speaking poor English, others for poverty. Some simply had no family to vouch for their sanity. Many, Nellie believed, were as sane as she was. They had simply been forgotten. And what of the treatments? There were few. Most of the time, patients sat on hard benches, staring at walls. No books, no music, just time stretching endlessly forward. Nellie had to be careful. Too much resistance, and she might be punished. Too much clarity, and she might be disbelieved. So she walked a fine line, enduring the routines, gathering details, waiting. Finally, after 10 long days, a lawyer from her newspaper, the New York World, arrived to secure her release. It was an unusual request, and the asylum complied, never suspecting what was to come. When her article was published, it caused a sensation. Titled 10 Days in a Madhouse. It revealed in calm and clinical detail the truth of what she had seen. There was no shouting, no dramatics, just simple, undeniable facts. Dirty food, cold baths, indifferent staff, forgotten women, and it worked. Her report led to a grand jury investigation. Funding for the asylum was increased. Conditions, while far from perfect, began to improve. And Nellie Bly, brave, determined, and quietly revolutionary, had carved a new path for investigative journalism. She had used calm observation to expose a quiet cruelty. Imagine now the difference one person made, not with outrage, but with clarity. Not with a storm, but with steady footsteps through silent halls. And as her story fades gently into the background, we turn now to something older, to methods even stranger, to the long, winding road that humanity has walked in its effort to understand the mind. Let us explore them, slowly and carefully, before the age of quiet corridors and pale asylum walls, before the word psychiatry existed in any formal sense. Humans still sought to understand why minds wandered, trembled, or fractured. And in their seeking, they devised methods, some thoughtful, others peculiar. Let us begin with a practice as old as recorded history, trephination. Picture yourself in a quiet, sunlit hut. A healer, with hands steady from years of experience, uses a sharpened stone to scrape or drill a small hole into the skull of a patient. This practice, documented on nearly every inhabited continent, was believed to release evil spirits, cure seizures, or relieve headaches. It may sound unthinkable today, but trephined skulls from prehistory often show signs of healing, meaning the patient lived and perhaps even felt relief. Fast forward to the Victorian age. Science is emerging, but so is confusion. Physicians of the 19th century were in a delicate dance, caught between traditional beliefs and new theories about the brain. Terms like melancholia, hysteria, and mania were used to classify conditions, but treatments remained uneven. Leeches were applied to the temples to drain what was believed to be an excess of blood or humors. Balance, after all, was thought to be the root of health. Spinning chairs were another strange invention, seats designed to rotate a patient rapidly, under the theory that dizziness or disorientation might somehow reset the mind. Then there were the cold water therapies. Baths, often kept just above freezing, were thought to reduce agitation. Some were meant to be calming. Others were punishment in disguise. Lobotomies, though more a 20th century practice, had their early roots in the belief that sections of the brain could be altered to improve behavior. The idea of surgical intervention was growing slowly, quietly, and dangerously. Electricity, too, made its appearance. In its earliest uses, it was applied to various parts of the body, even the head, as a way to stimulate the nerves. Results were unpredictable and understanding was minimal. But not all treatments were physical. There were moral therapies, a more humane philosophy that gained traction in progressive institutions. The idea was simple. Patients should be treated with kindness, given clean surroundings, purposeful work, and gentle structure. It worked, for a time, but required funding, staff, and patience, things not always available. Throughout all of these approaches, from bone drills to bathwater, a common thread can be traced, an attempt to do something, to fix what was not yet understood. And while many of these treatments have faded into disuse, their echoes remain in language, in architecture, in dusty medical texts and half-remembered practices. Now, step back. Let those images soften. Stone tools, wooden chairs, silent wards. A long history of minds trying to heal minds. We will leave these behind now. Imagine now a well-kept London townhouse. It is morning, and the sun filters gently through lace curtains. In the parlor, the air smells faintly of lavender and polished wood. The house is still, but quietly alive with motion. Servants moving below, fire gently crackling, and soft footsteps above. You are the lady of the house, or perhaps the governess, or perhaps a young woman preparing for another day in a world of expectations. Unlike the asylum, this world is clean, quiet, and full of comforts. But even here, there is another kind of confinement, less visible but no less real. From a young age, upper-class women in Victorian society were raised with a firm awareness of duty. Duty to appear modest, to speak softly, to carry oneself with grace. Every action, from the folding of a letter to the pouring of tea, had a proper way. The days were structured not by bells but by etiquette. Breakfast might be served privately in your room. Then, if you were unmarried, you might spend the morning in embroidery, reading approved literature, or walking, always with a companion. If you were a governess, a peculiar figure somewhere between servant and family, you would begin teaching. French, perhaps, or piano, or sewing. Afternoons meant calling on other families, or receiving visitors, always dressed in layers of silk and bone, the corset tight, posture perfect. Conversations were polite, measured, and careful. Real emotion was tucked behind small smiles and folded hands. Marriage was the silent goal of every debutante season. And once married, a woman's world changed again. She was expected to run the household, bear children, manage servants, and never let the strain show. Despite the elegance, life could be stifling. Women's voices were rarely heard in politics or science. Ambitions were, more often than not, redirected into needlework, charitable works, or silent frustration. Mental health issues, if they arose, were often brushed aside, labeled as nerves, faintness, or female hysteria. Many women were quietly medicated with laudanum, a potent tincture of opium, given not to treat but to dull the edges of a life too carefully controlled. Yet there was beauty too, gardens in bloom, music from a nearby room, a good book, the subtle joy of mastering a dance or a sonata. Life in this world moved gently, sometimes too gently, but it moved. And when the day ended, candles were lit, tea was poured again, and the house slowly descended into sleep. So we return to sleep now, too. Not in a stone asylum, not under a surgeon's hands, but here in the soft quiet of another time. You've walked with us through silent halls and secret thoughts, through cold basins and warm parlors, through the still rhythm of life inside the walls of the 19th century mind. From the overlooked routines of asylum life to the bravery of Nellie Bly, through forgotten treatments, and into the quiet rooms of the privileged, we've wandered through the many ways society has tried to manage what it did not fully understand. As you lie still now, let the echo of the past drift gently away. Let it settle into softness, into calm, into sleep. You are not in a ward. You are not in a corset. You are simply here and safe and still. Thank you for listening to Boring History for Sleep. Until next time, rest well and dream of quieter days.